The day the red earth swallowed her father's coffin, the sky over Umurdim village was cloudless, heavy with heat that clung to the skin. Amara stood beside the grave, her faded dress sticking to her back with sweat and grief. Her mother had died years earlier, and she had no siblings to stand with her. When the last handful of sand landed on the coffin lid, the mourners drifted away, their voices fading like an unfinished song. Her father's relatives wasted no time. Before the mourning week was over, they arrived at the small mud house with hard eyes and cold voices. "This house belongs to the family now," her father's eldest cousin declared. "You are young. You will find somewhere else." Amara begged, explaining she had nowhere to go, but they didn't listen. By the next morning, her father's few belongings had been divided among them, and her clothes stuffed into a sack. She walked away from the only home she had ever known, barefoot, with tears blurring the dusty path and her heart pounding with fear. Her first night on the street was spent on a rough wooden bench outside a locked provision shop. Mosquitoes buzzed in her ears, the hard planks bruised her ribs, and she woke shivering before dawn. Hunger quickly stripped away her pride. By the third day, she was offering to carry baskets and goods for market women at mile 12, using a battered wheelbarrow lent to her by a kind old trader. From sunrise to sunset, she pushed heavy loads, sacks of onions that burned her eyes, basins of pepper, and bunches of plantain, heavier than her small frame. Each trip from the market stalls to the bus stop earned her just enough for a plate of rice or gari. Sometimes the women paid her with leftover food, which she would eat cold at night, just to silence the ache in her belly. Rainy days were the worst. The ground turned into mud, and her worn slippers slipped with every step. Still, she kept going, because if she stopped, she would not eat. One evening, searching for a safe place to sleep, she wandered near an unfinished shopping complex. The site was fenced with rusted zinc sheets, and the night guard, a middle-aged man named Baba Ibeji, spotted her standing by the gate. "Where you dey go this night, small girl?" he asked. When she explained she had nowhere to stay, he allowed her in, on the condition that she help him with odd jobs. At first, she swept the site each morning, fetched water, and ran small errands. Over time, she was given a helmet and a broom. She began working during the day, sweeping cement dust and carrying planks for 1,500 naira a day. On days the contractor needed extra hands, she mixed concrete until her hands cracked from the powder. In exchange, she was allowed to sleep in the corner of the security post on a thin mat. It was far from comfort, but safer than the open street. On days the construction site had no work, she went back to the market with her wheelbarrow. Life became a cycle of sweat, dust, and hunger. Yet even on nights when her stomach growled loudest, she remembered her father's final words. "Amara, no matter how hard it gets, keep your hands clean. Don't take what's not yours." She had no way of knowing that holding on to those words would one day put her face to face with two of the richest men in Lagos, and that her honesty would spark a battle for her heart she never imagined. The morning sun over the construction site was sharp and unforgiving, making the air shimmer above the heaps of sand and gravel. Amara tied a scarf tightly over her hair, her palms already dusty from hauling the cement bags. The mason she was working with barked instructions over the noise of shovels and wheelbarrows. She mixed cement and sand in a wide iron pan, adding water until it turned into thick grey paste, then carried it over to where he was laying blocks in a neat line. By midday, sweat ran down her neck and soaked the back of her shirt. When the foreman called for a short break, she wiped her face with her sleeve and crossed the street to buy a small plate of rice and beans from Mama Kimmy's kiosk. The smell of fried plantain was already making her stomach growl when something across the road caught her attention. A red SUV was parked by the roadside, bonnet up, steam curling from the engine. Behind it stood a tall man in a crisp shirt, looking around as if hoping for help. But what froze Amara's steps were the three rough-looking men closing in on him, shirts hanging loose, eyes sharp with hunger and mischief. She didn't stop to think. Dropping the idea of food entirely, she glanced around until she spotted a long wooden stick leaning against a wall. Grabbing it, she ran straight towards the scene. "Hey, leave Am alone!" she shouted as she approached, her voice loud and angry like she had a whole crew behind her. The thugs turned, surprised to see a slim young woman charging at them with a stick raised high. She didn't slow down. She swung the stick at the air near the tallest one's arm, the crack making them step back. "Wouldn't be this," one of them snapped. "You go wait here, make police catch all of Una," Amara barked, moving between them and the man. She looked like someone who had nothing to lose, and the men, muttering insults, slowly backed away before melting into the street. The man exhaled, relief clear on his face. "Thank you. God, you just saved me," he said, his voice deep but still shaky. Amara lowered the stick and glanced at the open bonnet. "Your battery no day tight," she said, leaning in. She adjusted the cables with quick hands, pressed them into place, and signaled for him to try starting the car. He turned the key. The engine roared to life instantly. His face lit up with a broad smile. "You're incredible," he said, pulling out his wallet. "Please take this." She shook her head. "No, sir. I didn't do it for money." "It's not payment," he insisted, pressing the folded notes into her hand. "Just buy yourself something to eat. You've earned it." She hesitated, then finally nodded. "Thank you." He studied her for a moment, as if wanting to say more. "I'll be back in a few weeks to check on you," he said at last. She only smiled, assuming it was the kind of polite promise strangers make. What she didn't know was that he wasn't just any stranded driver, and that when he returned, he would bring with him the first stirrings of a storm that would change her life forever. The next morning, Amara woke up on the thin mat in the corner of the security post with a tight knot in her stomach. The small amount of money the man from yesterday had given her was almost gone, and she knew it wouldn't be enough to sustain her through the day. Work at the construction site was slow that week, so she decided to return to the only other hustle she knew, pushing her wheelbarrow at the market. By mid-morning, she was at the roadside bus stop, weaving through the noise and bustle. Market women shouted prices over the honking of impatient Danfo drivers and the smell of ripe plantain mixed with the sharp scent of dried fish. A heavy basket of tomatoes and red pepper sat waiting for delivery, and a middle-aged woman called her over. "Amara, I beg carry 'em go bus stop for me. Careful the tomatoes done cost well today," the woman said. Amara balanced the heavy basket into the wheelbarrow and began the slow push toward the bus stop. Sweat ran down her face and her arms ached, but she kept her pace steady. Meanwhile, just a few feet away from where she was headed, a neatly dressed man in a dark suit was stepping into a commercial bus. He adjusted his tie, paid the conductor, and squeezed into a corner seat. As he shifted, his leather wallet slipped silently from his back pocket and landed unnoticed near the edge of the curb. He didn't see it, and within minutes, the bus had pulled away. By the time he reached his office in Victoria Island and reached for his wallet, he froze. Inside that wallet had been $5,000, his international passport, and important ID cards. His pulse raced. Without wasting time, he went straight to the nearest police station to report it missing, hoping somehow it would be returned. Back at the bus stop, Amara lowered the wheelbarrow to the ground and helped the woman place the basket inside a waiting bus. As she stepped back, her eyes caught a faint glint at the edge of the curb, almost hidden by dust and a discarded nylon bag. She bent down and found a brown leather wallet wedged against the concrete. It was the kind of spot no one would look twice at, but something made her notice it. She picked it up, brushed it clean, and set the wheelbarrow's handles against her hip. As she continued walking away, curiosity got the better of her, and she opened it. Inside was a thick stack of US $100 bills, $5,000, tucked beside an international passport, a driver's license, and other cards. Her breath caught. That money could change her life overnight. She could rent a room, buy food for months, even save for school. But her father's words echoed in her mind. No matter how hard it gets, keep your hands clean. Without hesitating further, she turned the wheelbarrow toward the nearest police station. When she arrived, the officers on duty looked up in surprise as she placed the wallet on the counter. She explained exactly how she had found it, pointing out the unusual spot by the curb. One officer frowned, glancing at her dusty clothes. "My sister, do you know how much is in here?" "Yes," she said simply. "And you still bring it here, with the way you struggle?" She shrugged. "It's not mine. If I keep it, it will only bring trouble." The officers exchanged looks, almost in disbelief. One finally spoke. "Someone came here earlier to report a missing wallet. We'll call him immediately." They took her name and the phone number she used on a small borrowed handset, then told her she could go. Amara stepped back out into the bright sun, pushed her wheelbarrow toward the market, and tried not to think about the fortune she had just let slip through her fingers. What she didn't know was that returning that wallet would soon pull her into another powerful man's world and set the stage for a rivalry that would shake her quiet life to its core. A few weeks later, the sun was already hot over the construction site by mid-morning. Amara's back ached from the repeated bend and lift rhythm of carrying cement blocks from the stack to where the masons were laying them. Dust clung to her skin, and sweat trickled down her temple. She had just dropped another block when the deep hum of powerful engines rolled into the site. Heads turned. A convoy of 3 tinted luxury SUVs glided to a stop by the dusty roadside. Workers paused mid-task, leaning on shovels to watch. From the lead SUV, a tall, handsome man stepped out. His dark suit fit him perfectly, the shine of his shoes almost blinding under the sun. He looked out of place among the sand piles and scaffolding, yet his gaze scanned the workers until it found her. He walked straight toward her, his voice steady and direct. "Are you Amara?" She straightened, brushing cement dust from her hands. "Yes, sir." "You returned my wallet a few days ago?" She nodded. "Yes, I found it by the bus stop after dropping goods for a woman. I saw the police station and thought it should be returned. They said someone had already reported it lost." The man's expression softened into something between surprise and admiration. "Do you know how rare that is? Someone like you, struggling as you are, most would have kept it. There was $5,000 inside." Amara lowered her eyes. "It wasn't mine." By now, curious workers were drifting closer, murmuring to each other. Even the foreman had stepped out from behind the cement mixer, frowning slightly at the scene. The man took one more look at her calloused hands, then turned to the foreman. "She won't be carrying blocks anymore." The foreman raised his brows. "Sir?" The man faced Amara again. I'll get you somewhere decent to live. You don't belong here." She blinked, unsure what to say, but he had already signaled to one of his aides. Before the day was over, the aide returned with a signed rental agreement and a key to a furnished one-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of town. Amara stood in the small living room that evening, still smelling faintly of paint and polish, and wondered if this was real or a dream. Meanwhile, in a different part of Lagos, the man she had helped on the lonely road, the one with the red SUV, was finally back from his business trip abroad. At an exclusive restaurant in Victoria Island, he sat with two close friends over dinner, speaking with an unusual energy. "There's this girl," he said, his voice carrying more warmth than usual. "Amara. She saved me from a robbery. Brave, honest. She might be the woman I've been looking for." His friends exchanged amused glances, teasing him about finally sounding like a man in love. He only smiled faintly, swirling the wine in his glass. He had no idea that someone else had already stepped into Amara's life. Someone with just as much wealth, and now a reason to fight for her heart. True to his word, a few days after returning from his trip, the man with the red SUV, whose name was Obinna, drove to the construction site to look for Amara. He imagined surprising her, maybe taking her out to eat, but when he asked for her, the foreman's answer stopped him cold. "She no day here again," the foreman said, leaning on a shovel. "One very rich man come, say she no go work here anymore. Na him get her now. She day live for mainland." Obinna's brows drew together. Get her? He didn't like the sound of that. With some gentle prodding, he got the address and wasted no time driving there. The apartment block was neat, with fresh paint and a small garden out front. He parked and called her name from the gate. Amara appeared a few minutes later, surprise flickering across her face. "You came back," she said with a small smile. "I told you I would," he replied. "Can we have lunch?" They went to a quiet restaurant not far away. Over plates of jollof rice and grilled chicken, Obinna leaned forward, his voice steady but warm. "Amara, I'm not going to pretend. I like you. You're the kind of woman I've been searching for. I want to marry you." Her fork paused mid-air. He reached into his briefcase and slid an envelope toward her. "This is the key and documents to a fully furnished apartment. No strings, just a place you can call yours." She stared at it for a moment before gently pushing it back. "Thank you, but I already have a comfortable place to stay. Someone rented me this apartment. He's also been kind to me." Obinna tilted his head. "Who?" She hesitated only a moment. "His name is Chiki." A faint smile tugged at Obinna's lips. "Chika, I know where his office is." Later that week, Obinna walked into a sleek glass building in Victoria Island. The receptionist announced him, and within minutes, he was standing in Chiki's office. The room was wide and filled with the faint scent of leather and polished wood. "I came to speak about Amara," Obinna began, his tone direct. "I care about her. I want to marry her. I'm prepared to make you an offer to step aside." Chika leaned back in his chair, then suddenly let out a deep, hearty laugh. "Step aside," he repeated. "My friend, you have no idea. I love her too, and I intend to marry her." Obinna's jaw tightened. "Then let's be men about it. Name your price." Cheek's smile widened. $1 million. Obinna chuckled, reached into his jacket pocket, and scribbled a figure on a notepad. He pushed it across the desk. $2 million. You step aside." For a moment, the room went quiet, the air heavy with challenge. Neither man blinked. They both knew this was no longer about money. It was about who would win Amara's heart. That night, Amara lay on the narrow bed in her new apartment. the ceiling fan spinning lazily above her. The room was quiet, but her mind was loud. She stared at the shadows moving across the wall, thinking about the two men who had suddenly stepped into her life. Chica, the man with the convoy, had given her a home without asking for anything in return. He was calm, confident, and seemed to watch her with a quiet admiration that made her feel seen. Obinna, the man with the red SUV, had faced danger beside her on that lonely road. His voice was warm, his laughter unforced, and his proposal at lunch still echoed in her ears. Both men were generous. Both had shown her kindness she had not known for years, and both wanted her in ways that were beginning to pull at her heart. She rolled onto her side, hugging her pillow. What do I do, she thought. How can I choose without breaking one of them? Across town, in the upper floor of a luxury apartment overlooking the Lagos Lagoon, Obinna stood by the wide glass window, a glass of water in his hand. The city lights shimmered like scattered gold below him, but his eyes were distant. He thought about the way Amara had pushed that stick into the air to chase away the thugs, the stubborn way she had tried to refuse his money, the honesty in her eyes when she told him about Cheeky. She wasn't like the women who usually drifted in and out of his world. She had a strength that pulled him in. She's worth fighting for, he murmured to himself. And I will fight. Whatever it takes, I'm not letting her go. He sipped the water, set it down, and began making quiet plans in his mind. Small ways to be present in her life, to prove he could give her more than gifts. In another part of the city, Chica sat alone in his home office, the faint hum of the air conditioning filling the silence. The polished desk before him was covered with open files, but he wasn't reading. His mind was on Amara, the way she had brushed cement dust from her hands the first time he saw her, the steadiness in her voice when she explained how she found and returned his wallet. He leaned back in his leather chair, smiling faintly. She didn't take advantage of me, even when she could have. That's rare, very rare. A thought settled firmly in his chest. I'm not giving her up, not to anyone. He knew Obinna now, knew his confidence, his wealth, and his charm. But Chica had built his own empire by never walking away from something he truly valued. And Amara was no longer just a passing interest. She had become a vision of the life he wanted. Back in her apartment, Amara sat up and turned on the small lamp beside her bed. The light spilled over the simple furniture Cheeky had provided, over the neatly folded clothes she had washed earlier that day. Her life had changed so quickly. Only weeks ago, she had been sleeping in the corner of a construction site's security post, working herself to exhaustion just to buy a small plate of food. Now, two men of means, two men from a world she never thought she'd enter, were looking at her as if she was something precious. It should have felt like a blessing, but it felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. She pressed her palms together, closed her eyes, and whispered, God, if you're listening, show me who truly loves me, not just who can give me the most. The fan above her kept turning. The city outside kept moving. And somewhere out there, two men were making silent promises to themselves. Promises that would soon turn into actions, and actions that would lead to a storm she could no longer avoid. 2 days before her birthday, neither Cheeky nor Obinna could think about anything else. Both men, at different times, had quietly returned to the construction site where Amara used to work. They spoke to the foreman, pretending to be making casual conversation, but both ended up asking the same question. What else could he tell them about her? The foreman, smiling knowingly, told them what they wanted to know. Amara's birthday was coming up in 2 days. Each man left the site with the same thought. I'll surprise her. I'll make her see I'm the one. Chike's plan involved precision. He made calls to his dealership, selected a brand new Range Rover in pearl white, and arranged for a money bouquet so large it would take 2 men to carry. He also hired a small team of trumpeters to create a celebratory scene she would never forget. Obina's plan was just as grand. He picked out a sleek black Mercedes-Benz, polished to a mirror shine, also with a money bouquet, and his own set of trumpeters. Neither man knew the other was plotting the same thing. Amara was still curled under her bedsheet, lost in sleep, when the sound of car horns and brass instruments broke the morning quiet. She sat up, blinking in confusion. From her window, she saw Obina's black Mercedes parked just outside the gate, sunlight bouncing off its hood. Behind it stood a small group of trumpeters in matching vests, their music loud and lively. Obina stood in front, smiling, holding a money bouquet wrapped in gold paper. "Birthday girl," he called toward her balcony. Before she could even step out to the corridor, another sound rose above the trumpets, a second melody, louder, bolder. Her head snapped toward the street just as a pearl-white Range Rover rolled up and stopped behind the Mercedes. Cheek stepped out in a dark suit, also holding a massive money bouquet. His own set of trumpeters played in competition with Obina's band, the street now bursting with clashing tunes. Amara froze at the sight. Her heart pounded. She had no idea how to react. The neighbors began to pour out, some in house clothes, some still tying wrappers, forming a crowd along the roadside. Phones came out, videos started rolling. A few children danced to the noise, not caring about the tension brewing in the air. Then, without warning, the greetings turned into confrontation. "So this is what you're doing?" Obina said loudly, his voice cutting over the music. "You couldn't come on another day?" Cheek laughed sharply. "You don't own her birthday. You think I'll stand back and watch you act like you're the only one who cares?" The trumpeters, sensing trouble, slowed to a stop. The air felt heavier. Obina stepped forward. "You're trying to buy her affection, but it won't work." Cheek's jaw tightened. "And what exactly are you doing? That car didn't buy itself." The crowd murmured. Some neighbors tried to shush them, but the 2 men were locked in a contest of pride neither was willing to lose. Voices rose, hands gestured sharply. Amara, still in her nightdress, finally stepped out of the front door. The sight before her, 2 luxury cars, 2 money bouquets, 2 sets of trumpeters now silent, and 2 men yelling at each other, was overwhelming. Instead of smiling, she felt tears sting her eyes. This wasn't the happiness she wanted. This wasn't love. It was a competition. She turned around and ran back inside, locking the door behind her. Inside, she sank onto her bed, her breathing uneven. She could still hear the muffled sounds of their argument through the walls, the occasional honk, the shifting feet of curious neighbors outside. Her birthday should have been a day of joy, but now it felt like a storm had been delivered to her doorstep. She buried her face in her hands and whispered to herself, "What am I supposed to do?" Outside, both men, frustrated and embarrassed, eventually abandoned their cars and gifts on the street and drove off in separate directions. The neighbors lingered, buzzing with gossip, as Amara sat alone in her room, confused, hurt, and more uncertain than ever about the 2 men who claimed to care for her. That night, Amara couldn't bear to stay in her apartment. The silence pressed against her like a heavy blanket, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw the two men shouting at each other in the street. So she found herself walking toward the old construction site. The streetlights threw long shadows across the piles of sand and half-finished walls. Baba Ibeji, the night security man, was seated on a low stool, sipping tea from a dented flask. When he saw her, his face broke into a warm smile. "Ah, Amara, my Pekin. Long time." She managed a small smile and sat on the empty stool beside him. For a while they spoke about nothing. How the site had been quiet lately, how the new foreman was stricter. Then, her voice trembling, she told him about the two men in her life. "They are both kind," she said softly. "Both have done things for me no one else has. But now, I feel like I'm being pulled apart." Baba Ibeji nodded slowly, his eyes gentle. "My daughter, life no be competition. You can't pick a man because of car or money. Follow your heart. Now your heart go tell you who really love you." His words stayed with her long after she left the site. Back in her apartment, she tried to sleep, but her thoughts wouldn't settle. By midnight, her chest felt tight, and a pounding headache made it impossible to rest. She decided to walk to the small hospital a few streets away. The doctor on duty, a calm middle-aged woman named Dr. Easy, listened patiently as Amara explained everything, from her life before meeting the men to the birthday scene that had left her shaken. "You are under stress," Dr. Ease said, adjusting her glasses. "Your body needs rest before you make any decision." Amara sat silently for a moment. Then a thought flickered in her mind. Slowly, it grew into a plan. "What if," she began cautiously, "I could find out who truly loves me, without them knowing it's a test?" The doctor leaned forward. "What do you have in mind?" Amara took a deep breath. "I'll pretend I've had an accident. I'll act like I can't walk. I want to see who will stay, not for what I can give, but for me." Dr. Ease raised her eyebrows, then after a moment, nodded. "It's unusual, but I understand why you want to do it." Together, they discussed the details. The doctor agreed to be part of the plan after hearing her story. They would make it believable, but safe. The next morning, the hospital phone lines buzzed. Dr. Ease's voice was urgent but controlled as she made two separate calls, one to Cheek, one to Obina. "This is Dr. Ease from Mercyville Hospital. Amara was rushed in last night. She was in an accident. She's stable, but she has a spinal injury. She may not be able to walk for some time. You should come quickly." She hung up each time, her eyes meeting Amara's. Amara lay on the hospital bed, her legs covered, her mind racing. Soon, she would see. Soon, the truth would come out. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the moment the two men would walk through that door. When the calls went out from Dr. Ease, the reactions could not have been more different. Obina, the man Amara had saved from the thugs, was already in his car before the doctor had finished speaking. "I'm on my way," he said, his voice tight with worry. Within the hour, he was standing at her hospital bedside. "Amara," he breathed, taking her hand gently. "What happened?" She forced a weak smile, leaning into her role. "It was an accident. They say I may not be able to walk for a while." Obina's jaw tightened, but he didn't waste words. That evening, he came back with a tray of food. Not just any food. He had gone to Mama Kemi's kiosk to buy her favorite rice and beans with plantain. The same comfort she had loved back when she worked at the site. Over the next few days, he became a fixture in the hospital room. He would bring food and feed her when she was too weak to lift the spoon, read her messages from her phone, adjust her pillows, and even tease her to keep her smiling. The nurses began to greet him like family. 3 days later, Chiki finally appeared. He walked into the room in a fresh suit, the faint scent of expensive cologne following him. "I came as soon as I could," he said, though his eyes darted briefly to his watch. "I had an urgent business trip." Amara thanked him, but the visit felt brief. He asked a few questions, assured her that he would cover any medical bills, and then his phone rang. He stepped outside to answer, promising to come back. But days went by, and he didn't return. Instead, he sent flowers and text messages saying he was busy with investors. Obinna, meanwhile, was still there, every morning, every evening. He didn't just sit, he was present. He listened to her worries, told her about his day, and sometimes just sat quietly beside her when she didn't feel like talking. One quiet afternoon, Amara watched him peel an orange for her, the scent of the fruit filling the small hospital room. Something warm swelled in her chest, and she knew the test had run its course. "Obinna," she said softly. He looked up. "Yes?" She took a deep breath. "I have to tell you something, and I hope you'll understand." He tilted his head, curious. "This accident?" She hesitated, then continued. "It wasn't real. I staged it. I needed to know who truly cared for me, not just who could give me the most expensive gifts. The doctor helped me because she understood my situation. I wanted to see who would stay." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Obinna's lips curved into a slow smile. "You mean, all this time you've been testing me?" She nodded, her eyes brimming. "And you passed. You stayed when you didn't have to. You showed me love without asking for anything back." Obinna reached for her hand. "Amara, I didn't stay to pass a test. I stayed because I can't imagine my life without you. From the moment you stood between me and those thugs, I knew you were different, and I wasn't wrong." Her chest tightened with emotion. "Then say it again," she whispered. "I love you," he said simply. Months later, the wedding took place in a small garden, not a grand hall. Friends from the market, workers from the construction site, and even Baba Ibeji were there. The air was filled with music and laughter. Chiki never appeared, though he sent a polite card wishing them well. Amara had no regrets. She had followed her heart, just as Baba Ibeji advised. As the sun dipped low that evening, Amara stood beside Obinna, their fingers intertwined. She thought of her father's words, "Keep your hands clean," and smiled. She had gained more than a husband. She had found a love that didn't need to be bought. And for the first time in years, her future felt certain.